if we do it right, it takes 20 years to build a brand. And if we have built it patiently and consistently, the next 2 generations of family, 40 years, will live off that. So don't be in a hurry. Don't accelerate the development past its natural curve, because if you do, the brand won't make it.
The other theme that I wanted to touch on is, as we say, we define a brand as a promise, the value of that promise that is consistently kept. So, as brands, as I say, are often the most misunderstood, underleveraged asset sitting on a lot of companies' balance sheets. So being able to pull that value out and build it through the consistent delivery of a unique, ownable promise to the market. You've made a living out of turning companies around, creating value through wonderful promises that at the time, even in commoditized categories like coffee, you brought innovation. You brought some news that was able to grow the value of the 𝗕𝗂𝘊 asset, as an example. So I was wondering if you could share with our viewers some other examples of where and how you might have applied that logic.
Yes. May I start the answer by just saying how to approach it before you can decide how to do it?
It's a good start point.
What's the analysis that says, here's where there are nuggets that if you can harness them, you can then do what you want to do. You and I have chatted previously that one of my favorite strategies would be labeled disaggregation, which is the grunt work of getting down to more detail than your competitor normally will pursue in order to better understand the situation and what needs to be different in the future in order to realize the brand consistency and value. But it's on the right track, that you can afford to be consistent because you know it's right and you've got the money.
So maybe you could talk, I love your disaggregation, because I think some people might confuse that with doing a lot of analysis. Disaggregation is a much broader, more strategic concept than just doing analysis. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yes. Every month an operator gets his results come in, and you got a budget, and the budget says you want to be up 10% this month, and the results come up 15% growth versus a year ago, and everybody says, great, I'm busy on something else, leave it alone, it's going fine. If you drill down a little bit and look at 10 provinces of Canada or your top 20 states, you find out that actually that plus 15% is made up of 2 guys who blew the doors off, 50% up, and 3 guys that stunk. And instead of saying leave it alone, you should be going out to help the 3 guys that stunk. Or the other way around, if the business is short, let's do a promotion. And that's all the attention you give it when it's not really needed half of your geography. So it's a question of getting beneath the superficial skin. A simple example I can offer you would be, Tracy and I are blessed to have a daughter who's now 26. She's got her own business. And about 8 years ago, I wanted to start getting her interested in stock and investments and companies in case she was minded to go that direction. I've always been fascinated by Apple, who I think have done a wonderful example we can all learn from. And at that time, Apple was everybody's golden brand. We watched them every day, from Steve Jobs standing up with his iPhone and calling Starbucks to where it is today. I looked at the superficial figures, and while it had grown spectacularly, the multiple of earnings at that time, as I recall it, was about 12. And yet all the peers, like HP and Microsoft and so on, had very different multiples. If it was a hardware competitor, they were all about 12 to 15. If it was a software competitor, they were all 30 to 50. So the value of the enterprise, from which comes its ability to afford to do the right things, was dramatically different. Apple was being viewed by the investors as a hardware company, whereas Microsoft, a software company, and so much for the peers. So I said, let me just look beneath the surface and see what I can see. And I didn't go to any great lengths. But what was clear, I love to look at the bottom 10% of every company, because that's where forgotten things go to be out of sight. And if you're not careful, go to die.
Yep.
And down at the bottom, Apple had something called services. And it was growing fast, much faster than the regular business, which was growing fast. Much lower capital investment, higher margins on an already high margin business. And I said to myself, services equals something like Microsoft, Dell Computer, HP equals something like hardware.
Right.
And it was only 13%. Is it possible that someday that could be more than half the company? And my smell was, and it's no more than that, yes, it could. What would happen to the value of the company if the investors perceived that that day was tangible, credible, and achievable? And my conclusion was the multiple would be re-rated. And that's what's happened.
Yep.
So I bought her a few shares, and she's still got them, and it's been a very fine ride. But they've done a fine job of changing the makeup and the perception of the business, and therefore the affordability to do the right things for the brand. And I shared with you the other day, current statement from Tim Cook, which I've got here with me. I love it. It's so appropriate to what we're talking about. Tim Cook says, quotes, "We believe strongly in investing for the long term, and we don't believe you can save your way to prosperity." Cook continued in the CBS Mornings Interview, "We think you invest your way to it." And they have invested not only in the hardware, but the services that follow that hardware. And that's why they have changed the brand and its presence in our households.
And I think that story is a wonderful example of, if all you did was the analysis on the Apple brand, you might look at the share price trends. Right? And so you see the end result of a lot of the disaggregation gets down into what creates those results.
Yes.
And that, again, is an important element of releasing or identifying value to be released in a brand. Yes. And I think that's a great piece of learning. Yes.
It became very clear there was only one business that would make it in the long run, which was coffee. And all the others were detracting management's attention from the one thing that had a chance but wasn't getting a chance. Basically, we have to get everything out of there except coffee.
So you're basically becoming a coffee company.
We were basically becoming a coffee company.
With no brand.
Private label and all that means.